Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. I'm looking at an important book today, one that affects all of us. It's a subject that's not treated as seriously as it should be. It's called Cybersecurity, Law and Practice. It's been written by a number of people: Dean Armstrong, Queen's Counsel, Dan Hyde and Sam Thomas. It's come to us from LexisNexis, and in fact it was originally a Jordan book. It's also now available as an ebook. And Elizabeth and I have given it a title for our review, a much needed book on a subject which is still not being taken seriously enough. And that may sound a bit melodramatic, but you'll understand why when you hear what I have to say. This is the book anyway. There's the front of it, there's the spine, and then there's the back. There's a lot of detail, you can probably see that on the back. If I just move it up, there's quite a lot of information there. It's a hardback book. I think it's a valuable resource for anybody involved at the moment in what is a difficult area for us. There's the index at the back. It's 270 odd pages. You can see that the actual index is by paragraph numbering, not by page numbering. Its references are to paragraph numbers as mentioned in the index, so you will see immediately how you find things. If we go to the front of the book, it is available, as I say, as an ebook, which is very helpful. There are the authors. You can see that Dean Armstrong, Queen's Counsel, is from 2 Bedford Row Chambers, Dan Hyde is from Penningtons, and Sam Thomas is also from Bedford Row. Now, there's the information there, and I always like to show the dedications, which you can read. And a lot of work goes into any book, and so it's always nice to see the dedications that are actually included by the authors, because a lot of people are affected by the amount of time it takes to write these books. The preface itself is well worth reading because the authors set out very clearly, and I've taken a little bit of what they've said. For instance, our aim was to produce a comprehensive reference work that provides both a narrative and practical guidance on the many aspects of cybersecurity law. Well, they've done just that. Cyber laws cover a vast range of areas, and such is the volume of material that each chapter in this book could be a book in itself. You can see the problem immediately. Then we get on to the parts. You see part 1 is the legal framework, a bit of case law. Part 2, civil liability under the Data Protection Acts. Then that's actually chapter 2 rather. I'm looking specifically at this is the legal framework. Then we go on from there. You see the various chapters. Then part 2 is responding to a data breach. I think that would be very helpful for people in firms, possibly in chambers as well. And part 3, litigation, evidence and remedies. And part 4 is the future, which is worth, I think, also reading because you get some idea with the sort of problems we're going to have in the future, talking about the effect of Brexit, post-Brexit, and effects on the data protection regulation, the general data protection regulation, which is coming in shortly. So this is a very timely book. There's the case law set out, then tables of cases as well, statutes rather, then the statutory instruments, and then European materials, because there is a big interface between us and Europeans. There we go, you see the information that's produced. Then you get to part 1, the legal framework. Then you get a nice useful little index of what's in the first chapter. You see the way it's structured. You've got a lot of footnotes at the bottom, and you've got the paragraph numbering. Now, remember what I said about the back of this. You've got the paragraph numbering in the index as well. As I say, it's not a heavy book to read. I think it's a very important book, and I'm sure it's one that many firms will want to have in their library, bearing in mind what we're facing at the moment with cyber security issues. So let me talk about the book anyway. Cybersecurity has long been ignored by many people, but fortunately we're beginning to see useful changes of attitude as the as the issue rises up the legal agenda. And I'm certain that is happening at the moment. Clearly it's also on the political agenda of many as well. We now have a new book then from LexisNexis and Jordan entitled Cybersecurity, which explains what the subject is all about. It's been written by the leading experts in the field, that is Dean Armstrong, Queen's Counsel, and Sam Thomas from 2 Bedford Row Chambers, and Dan Hyde from Penningtons. Now the mission is to offer a single point of reference for all those dealing with cyber risk and data protection management. And it's an area where the law faces huge challenges to keep up with the rapid development of technology, which has provided opportunities for the misuse of information for commercial gain or other objectives by the unscrupulous. Now you'll hear this being said again and again in the book, the misuse of information, because that's really what this is all about. The authors have striven to focus sufficient content on cybersecurity and data management because they're now amongst the biggest issues facing business and other organisations today, and we ignore them at our peril because the worldwide dimension has added a further complexity, which I think is very well covered here. And we as practitioners know that the law faces huge challenges to keep up with the rapid development of technology, which has given some people opportunities for the misuse of computers on a large scale. And again, I don't feel, I have to say, having been involved in this for 40 odd years with computer systems from its infancy, I still don't think people realise the complete vulnerability that their systems really are, because they're open to attack, and it's an area we haven't really taken that seriously. Now, the new work, this book, covers the vast spectrum of law, both civil and criminal, as it applies to data control, data management and cyber issues, and the writers consider the legal implications of internal threats from employees, data mismanagement or inadequate software, together with external threats from competitors or criminals, and looks at the practical ways to deal with potential or actual cyber incidents. They do cover state-sponsored cyber attacks. It's a very difficult, controversial area, but the fact remains that that is actually what we are having to face in certain categories of attack. And I don't think it's going to lessen. I think it's going to get far worse before something is done about it. It actually will mean international treaties at the end of the day. It's the same with control of the internet, but we are not anywhere near that at the moment. Now, I think the book provides a unique, comprehensive coverage looking at three main areas. The first is the legal framework itself. That's cybercrime and the civil perspective, cyber property and employee liability and protection. It then goes on to the second issue, which is data issues, data security and protection, control mechanisms from embedded devices, data breach responses and commercial espionage. Now, what I'm saying here with both of those is that there is a lot of technical information there, which I'm not going to spoil it for you by trying to go into that much detail in this short presentation. But the third area are the practical issues. That's investigative powers, litigating and rules of evidence. That covers also immunity and the locus and status of the perpetrator. Then you're also looking at remedial steps and mitigating the loss, which is a lovely phrase, mitigating the loss. In other words, you are responsible for making sure that you've got adequate, you've done the correct things. There are all sorts of different words to describe it, but due diligence, whatever you want to call it, you are talking about making sure that you've got proper systems in place. Alas, some don't. And the difficulty also, when you go back to looking at the status of the perpetrator, the difficulty is what you do when it's a state that is hell-bent on destroying, perhaps for whatever reason, maybe political, the commercial activities of a country, because that actually seems to be what some of these people are up to. We don't really get very much information, certainly on the news, as to who's behind it, but I think the usual suspects probably will emerge in the next few years, because this subject, as I said in my earlier remarks, is not going to go away. The work concludes by looking at the potential impact of Brexit on data management and the control and significance of the impending general data protection regulation, which is coming in at the moment. And again, I don't think that has been really looked at. When it does come in, people are going to suddenly wake up possibly to the effect of that new regulation and what it means, irrespective of what happens with Brexit, which is still going to continue from March 2019 onwards. There's still going to be an awful lot of stuff to sort out. Now, it's clearly this book is a valuable new resource as a single point of reference for legal practitioners, including counsel, solicitors, in-house lawyers, compliance officers, and those dealing with cyber risk and data protection and management. Not only as it affects corporations, but also other entities, individuals and states. And I would say here that this is very much a management book, as well as a legal book. It's a management book as well for your law firm. And I think it has a much wider application as well. And I'd like to see certainly other people be aware of the availability of this book, because cybersecurity affects and will affect, I think, eventually every business that we have in the United Kingdom. And I don't say that lightly. We feel, of course, it will also have a wider interest, this book, to legal support staff themselves, which I've indicated. That will be the management of the firm and the general public as well, because of the importance of the subject, where cyber attacks can take a multitude of forms, because we are hearing about this sort of thing on a much more regular basis now, especially at certain vulnerable times. I mean, the classic, when there was a lot of worry, was the millennium bug, you probably recall. Now, that was a different type of problem, because that was probably perceived to be something rather different from what we've now got, which is a specific, deliberate, in many ways criminal attempt to damage businesses and countries. Now, let me conclude by saying that, as the authors say, they acknowledge the novel and developing nature of law in this area as a challenge, and are honest enough to say that when considering prosecutions, their approach so far is no more than a sticking plaster, given the situations where it's impossible or impractical to prosecute. That means the international perspective, where some states are either perpetrating or aiding breaches of cybersecurity. Obviously, there is criminal intent as well, and organised crime is involved on a national and international basis. We're talking about state interference here, which is clearly going on. No one's got the guts to turn up and name them and say what's happening, because of course you've got another problem, and that's proving it. Now, for this reason alone then, and what I'm saying at the moment, the book now takes attacks on computers and the online environment with the seriousness I think it deserves in 2017, because there have been too many occasions when the issue's just been brushed under the carpet, and I think time for that is over. As I've indicated, the publication date is 2017, and the law is as at the 1st of February 2017. And I'll just mention to you in the foreword, the preface rather, there, that they do actually refer specifically to the law is stated at the 1st of February 2017. Obviously, there will be changes that will take place in the future. As it says, the law faces huge challenges to keep up with the rapid development of technology, and of course, unfortunately, it's provided the misuse of information on a fairly vast scale. I did find the preface very hard-hitting, and I think you'd find it useful to read that. Just opening the book in the middle, chapter 5, you see employer liability and protection. Again, the nice structure of the short index for the chapter. Then you've got the standard structure with the paragraph numbering, and you've got some footnoting. But in general, this is a very important book. As I say, I think it has more than just a legal applicability, and therefore I'm hoping that it will have a wider readership as well. I'd like to thank certainly the authors very much indeed, and Lexis for taking this title on board. I think we'll be looking probably at new editions of this before too long, as inevitably things change over the next few years. In the meantime, thank you to all, and good luck. Bye-bye.